Ma'am, we are live now.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Deepak. A very good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us for this interesting session. We are live from the YouTube handle of the Startup Incubation and Innovation Center of IIT Kanpur. Today's session is on much demand. So today's session is entitled as Learning how to Prepare an Effective Investor Pitch. Today, on this particular topic, Mr. Mr. Tarun Bhargav is the speaker. And before telling you about Mr. Bhargav, I would like to share that this topic can also be further continued upon your demand, upon your ask, how you want us to continue it as a series also. We can help you all to prepare, to actually help you understand. Today, we will help you to understand how to prepare an investor pitch. And later on, we can train you what all components, how to write a pitch deck for your presentation, and how to prepare an elevator pitch also. So now I would like to thank Mr. Tarun Bhargav, who is the speaker for today's session. And to brief about him in such a short time is really difficult, but still I will try. Mr. Bhargav has an experience of more than 3 decades of steering prestigious firms to their zenith. He has a varied experience in working with the Indian corporates in telecom, retail, service, infrastructure, renewable energy sector. Being an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, he has very kindly agreed to mentor our startups and is on a fervent journey to converge his financial acumen with his intrinsic love for technology to help startups build and grow their business. To share with you the expertise that he has agreed to mentor our startups for includes resource mobilization in domestic and overseas market, strategy and planning, cash flow management, financial reporting, risk, governance, compliances, and setting up systems for early growth or high growth businesses with unwavering focus on disciplined execution and operational excellence. In case if you want to onboard any mentor from the mentor pool of SIIC IIT Kanpur, kindly connect with me. Now, I request you all to please text your questions or raise your hand. You know that we've moved you as panelists for smooth interaction during the session. But to avoid any disturbance, kindly raise your hand. We will give you a chance. Now, Tarun sir, without wasting any more time, I hand over the room to you and welcome you for this session. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vatsala, for your kind words and a very nice introduction about me. I would maybe just add from my perspective, for the benefit of all the audience, particularly the startups, as also maybe some of the students if they are on the call, that having spent about 3 decades in different corporates, as Vatsala mentioned, I am now onto a second journey of my life, which is effectively where I want to spend the rest of my life, as much as I can in the startup ecosystem, essentially about mentoring, advising, helping, guiding startups, founders, as they start from their journey, from an idea stage to right up to Series A funding and beyond. So, somebody would wonder, or you may have a question in your mind as to why am I doing this? What is really the sort of motivation or not so motivation of working in a corporate world? So I think it is very simple. One is, of course, when you work in large corporates, it's a different dynamics, So at some point in time, you need to throw in your towel and, raise your hand that, this is it. But more importantly, I think I have been fascinated towards, startups and the journey of founders and entrepreneurs when they start from a small idea and make it a big business. So throughout my career, I have actually spent my time in different organizations, learning how to build an organization, how to scale a business, how to manage the complexities of running a business enterprise, how to raise finances, which is really the key, and more importantly, how to manage your cash flows, because you may have a lot of money, but if you were to all fritter it away, and you may end up actually losing your cash and not having much cash on in your balance sheet, which can actually result to bankruptcy. In fact, I must mention here that one of the reasons, because of large corporations and profitable companies, they go bankrupt, it is because of that they run out of cash. Highly profitable, but they don't have cash. So this is something which is very, very important. And as founders, if we were to focus on cash from day one and judiciously utilize the capital which is available, it really goes a long way. So with this, I would probably, start the presentation, my own pitch deck, which I have prepared for this session. Just allow me a minute. Yeah. So, yeah. So before I move on, I wish to, acknowledge, Vatsala for her time that she took to, go through the pitch deck, prior to, me presenting here to everybody, and give her some suggestions for improving it, at a few places. Yep. So let me start with the basics. While we have a lot of jargons, we call startups, founders, go-to-market strategy, funding, cap table, investors, all of it, eventually it encompasses in a word called business. At the end of the day, whatever that we do, whatever product and service that we make, it is all about, building a business out of it. So many years ago, I just, put this equation in front of me that what is business? How do you define business? So business is equal to entrepreneurship plus risk management, right? It sounds simple or difficult. I don't know what's running up your mind, but, very simply put, when you are an entrepreneur, when you start your journey, obviously you have to take decisions, you have to take calls, you have to take risks. You have to build organizations. You have to be in an ecosystem where, you have to be cognizant of your environment, of the laws, of the people around, and so on and so forth. And over a period of time, very skillfully, you develop your abilities and you are able to build a business and manage the business. So that is all, entrepreneurship is all about. It is from idea to execution, right? Risk management is something which goes hand in hand, because we will all take risks as we go along, and we must be very conscious of the risks that we are taking and how we are going to mitigate them. And we build, pieces around, whatever actions or decisions that are being taken to ensure that those risks really do not, take the business down the tube. So this is all business has been, and this is fairly common sense, and it has been happening for, hundreds of years or thousands of years. There's nothing new. So there's not much either I or anybody else can teach you about, business or entrepreneurship. I think it is about a journey which each one of you have to start and learn of your own, be observant, and, as you go along in your life. Now let's come to startups. What is startups and how do they really they are different? So effectively, there is somebody who has an idea which is about causing a disruption, which is about challenging a status quo. And somebody wants to actually build a business with great speed. I mean, what happened in 10 years, you want to probably do in a year or maybe even less, right? So you want to really scale it up very fast. And as a result of growing fast, you obviously, you need a lot of capital, a lot of money, and, you need investors, because typically anybody who is, starting a billion, I mean, who eventually reaches to $1 billion enterprise and requires hundreds of millions of dollars, doesn't have capital to start with. And thankfully, over the last, 2 to 3 decades, the entire ecosystem of investors has matured. I mean, Silicon Valley is all what we look forward to or look upon to. But at the same time, we also have, a lot of investors in India as well, whether it is individuals, high net worth, family offices, angel networks, and you have early stage VCs and so on and so forth. So eventually, whatever that we intend to do, we have to go to an investor and make a pitch. It's very straightforward. Now, the question is, why should any investor make an investment into a particular business? So any investor typically, and we are talking of startups and venture capitalists, right? In that context, anybody is looking for a return on an investment of 5 to 10x in 3 to 5 years' time. Why 3 to 5 years? Because any fund is also raising capital from their investors, putting it together in a pot, and then investing into a few startups and eventually exiting and returning back the money to their investors as well. So typical time frame is 3 to 5 years. I mean, it could be longer, it could be 7 or 10 as well for larger funds and for specific uses. But this is really the ballpark. So the question is, let's say you have a startup, you raise $100,000, at a valuation of $1 million, for example, which is typically a thumb rule, if you have an idea stage. And this is what I understand, in the Valley, they talk about that if you go to investors with an idea, you can potentially look at a valuation of around $1 million, and you can raise some money which will take you to a certain stage, right? Now, $1 million means that in 5 years, an investor is putting in, 100K. Somebody is looking at a value of your business, which is, $10 million or $20 million or $50 million in 2 to 5 years. How does it happen? Okay, while, that is something can be a discussion for another day, but at the end of the day, it is directly correlatable to, the growth of business. So if your business grows 20x or 50x, and so your valuation be. So as such, it is all about making a big business from a product or a service which is solving a real life problem. So maybe I'll, pause here for a moment, and maybe if there are any questions that anybody has so far.
Anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. Okay, no, sir, we can. Okay, Charles has a question. Yes, Charles, please.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. So since actually we're talking about value and valuation, so can you please shed some light on like value? When we say value, what do we mean by it, and how we add value to the customers, etc.? Can you please talk a little bit on that? Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Charles, for this question. Yeah. So see, valuation. So so when we buy any product or a service, we are paying a certain value for it, right? Whether it is maybe it could be an Apple or it could be an iPhone, right? So there is a certain value attached to it. Now value and price, sometimes there is a word which is used, which is a price. The price at which the transaction happens. But value is something that, a person who's going to use that product or service perceives, perceives it to be. So, valuation in context of a business, in context of a startup is typically, people would, or let me not say startups, and typically in case of businesses, you would assign, there are multiple ways of you do valuation, but typically what people use is discounted cash flows. So effectively, if my business is yielding, let's say 1 crore of profit this year, and next year 2 crores, and thereafter, likely to happen 3 crores and so on. And assuming that the business will run for 10 years. So let's say on a cumulative basis, it's going to, make, let's say 50 crores of rupees over a period of time. Now, but this money is going to come over a period of time, and time has a certain value, right? So what we do, you actually discount those cash flows every year for the next 10 years, and at a certain rate, let's say, at 10%, because I'm happy with a 10%, sort of a return. And then you arrive at what is the value of that cash flow of 50 crore rupees today. So let's say it works out to maybe 35 crore rupees. So then I say that I am happy to pay 35 crore rupees for this business, which is likely to yield, let's say 50 crore rupees over a period of 10 years in a certain manner. And by investing 35 crores, that extra 15 crores that I'm going to get over a period of time is going to yield me a return of, let's say 10%. Okay, so now somebody is looking at a return of 10%, and therefore the equation works this way. Now, in case of, let's say the investors, let's say, when you look at, benchmark returns, if you look at historically BSE, Sensex or Nifty, over the 20-year period, you'll find that, on a compounded basis, it gives a return of 15% or 16%, somewhere around that, depending on the start point and the end point, right? A government bond, which is the safest, it gives a return of about 7.5 to 8%, right? As of today in the market. But however, the more risky is the asset class, the more risky is the investment, the higher somebody is looking at a return. For the simple reason that if I make an investment into 5 startups, I'm going to eventually, end up maybe making money in 3 startups. Maybe one will fail completely and one I will lose money. So I look at basket of my investment, and eventually I'm trying to get a certain return. So now today, coming back to your point, that today, if my startup is valued at $1 million, then in 5 years' time, if I were to have a revenue of, let's say, 100 crores, I mean, today it was, let's say, 0 today, 100 crores with a profit of 10 crores, then somebody can actually value my startup as a multiple of top line. So they may say that, 10 times of 100 crores is actually 1,000 crores. They may say, I will value a startup as 100 times of 10 crores of profit, which is again 1,000 crores. Or somebody may have a slightly different matrix. Okay. Now, all this value that somebody is doing, it is with an expectation that you have a certain model and you will earn certain revenue and you will earn at a certain cost. The higher somebody makes a valuation means that he's looking at that probably I can grow this business more and I can make more money out of this, this business because of my strategy, my value add that I'm going to do in this business. So typically, so that is how, people sort of, look at, valuations and, and look at, increasing value over a period of time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So if I were to move on, so typically, if you look at, investor pitch, I mean, it is a communication document. Yeah. To evince interest into the startup and potentially, make an investment by the investor to whom the pitch is being made, right? So it's all about communication. It is all about, what you want to say right from idea in terms of, how you're going to go about executing that idea and eventually make a business out of it. So no investor makes an investment only on the basis of pitch, right? I mean, that I'm sure, everybody will understand and appreciate. So to put it differently, so it is about, in the pitch, it is all about sharing the founder's vision and how that vision will be achieved or realized in a story form. Okay. So this is something that, you will hear it time and again. And I think everybody, who you talk to will talk about in a story form. So what is it that people are, talking about, when they say story? So for example, I can think of one example. So I was working in a renewable energy company, called Continuum Green Energy. The founder of that company is a IIT Delhi IIM Ahmedabad graduate, who started it in 2009 and 10. Now it's into the electricity sector, right? It's in the business of generating electricity. So in his pitch, when he would go and talk to the investors very often, he would say that in my childhood, in city of Gurgaon, there used to be a lot of, blackouts. Electricity would sort of go quite often, So, and his father was also working in a government department, and he was working in a sector which used to manage the electricity sector as well, in a particular department. So he had seen his father talking about it. So he says that, when he was as a child or, in his teens, he thought of that, can I do something where I can actually generate electricity so that you have a 24/7 supply, and no child, when he or she is studying, for exams, etc., faces this shortage, of electricity, lighting a bulb at home, or maybe running a fan or an air conditioner. So this was his story of where he started from. Okay. So effectively what you do is, in a pitch, in a presentation, these are hard facts that you put, woven with softer aspects. What are these softer aspects all about? It is all about your emotions. It is about your passion. It is all about your perseverance, your own integrity, your focus on execution. Come what may, you will not throw in the towel. Come what may, you will always stand behind, the startup, and make sure that you do everything and anything possible to make it a grand success. So that, that founder's zeal, that founder's, commitment, that founder's conviction is something that, each investor wants to see, without which I don't think anybody is going to put even a single rupee. It is as much as a founder's, character, as much as the idea which the founder brings on the table. And I can share with you, with my experience, because in the last 3 decades, I've spent a lot of time dealing with lenders and raising money, starting with, I think, about 2 crore rupees for my first job, when I started way back in 93, 94, to, raising green bonds, about $540 million, which is about 2.5 years ago. So every lender looks at, the founder, the promoter, and the people behind, about their integrity, about their value systems, about their, way of doing business, and, how they have run and managed the business. For them, that is very, very important and very key. As much as it is important for the debt investors, the same thing is important for the equity investors as well. Yeah. So this pitch that you make, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, followed by some Q&A. So what do you expect out of that pitch at the end of the day? Because finally, as I said earlier, nobody is going to make an investment, just listening to your pitch. If it happens, it's great. It's literally like fairy tale. So one, I think your objective should be that there are a lot of questions, which arise during the meeting with the investor. Okay. And this should be out of curiosity that you have been able to arise in the minds of the investor, right? Number one. Number two, you should get an invite for a detailed discussion or a deeper dive. I think if in your pitch deck that you make, and if you are able to achieve it, I think that's a great achievement. This is what you should look at, as an objective, in my view, when you make your first, pitch deck. So typically, I'm sure, there is tons of literature available. In fact, I also, over the last 1.5 years, looking at some videos, following certain people on LinkedIn, etc., etc. So if you look at it, you'll have tons of literature, okay, available on how to make an effective pitch deck, right? So one, of course, you need to have a reasonably good idea of PowerPoint, to handle PowerPoint or whichever tool that you're using to make a pitch deck, and, make an aesthetically nice and an appealing sort of a, presentation. But in terms of the content, typically, I'll maybe quickly just run through it. starting with a problem statement to solution to describing the product of the service and what is the value proposition that it is adding to the life of the customer who the intended target audience is. The market size. I think you've all heard of TAM, SAM, and SOM, right? So TAM is effectively the total addressable market. So depending on what the need is and what the problem that you're trying to solve, TAM could be, for example, if you are, let's say, in the business of selling shoes or maybe footwears, maybe 7.5 billion, population across the world is your TAM, right? Now, service addressable market is to an extent that you can reach out to, right? So which is about, effectively, we are looking at, if you are looking at maybe Uttar Pradesh, for example, with a population of maybe 20 odd crores. So that becomes your SAM. Now, what is SOM, which is a serviceable, obtainable market? So effectively, out of that, you may say that I want to make, footwear, which is, affordable at 50 rupees. And, so the lower end of the strata is going to actually buy this footwear. So effectively, your SOM could be just about 4 crores out of those 20 crores, right? So effectively, what is most important is SAM. It has to be reasonably big in size. And what is most relevant is SOM, which is your target audience, right? The fifth, obviously, is the competitive advantage and the moats that you build around, your business. What is it that you can do which nobody else can? Or nobody else can, but either they will take time, they may not be able to do as good as you do, they cannot do it in as cost-efficient manner as you do, or they may take a lot of time, right? So you have certain moats around your business. What is the pricing that you're going to charge? What is the go-to-market strategy? What is your current status of your business? How much effort you have done? Where have you reached? What is your, going forward plan in terms of key milestones in your business, right? All of this you then translate into a financial plan, that how much is the business that you're going to eventually do, over a period of time, right? And finally, it boils down to the ask. How much are you planning to raise? Where you're going to spend, and how, what kind of milestones you're going to reach over a period of time. Last but not the least, it is about the team behind the startup, which is really the key. I think, of course, you can always start, describing the team and talking about the team, particularly if you are in an idea stage where you have not even reached the revenue stage and you are probably not even ready to build the product. I think because then people are actually relying upon the team to say that these are the people who are going to actually take us, down the garden path. And these are the people who are going to actually develop this product, because of their capability, which has been demonstrated. So it's all about betting on the team, that people are actually investing. Okay, maybe I'll pause here for a moment before I move into the rest of the presentation for any questions that people may have.
Yes, we have a question, sir.
Yeah.
So it's by Mr. Vikas. He says that just as an example, I got an expression of interest from a private limited company on 2 products. One is stealth technology and second is EMI shielding. But when I was doing market research for making proposal, I did not get any market related data except templates. I would like to know, in that kind of opaque market, how to pitch in our product and what should be our strategy.
So, see, obviously, when you are starting new, afresh as a startup, you don't have money, which maybe large business houses may have, to actually, institute a team or a group who will do a market research for you. Obviously, that's ruled out, right? Very clearly. So, if you do not get data pertaining to, your product and the use case that you are trying to solve, my suggestion would be that you look at what are the surrogates, okay? What are the alternatives which is being used, and therefore, what is the market size for those products? That could be one way. The second way, now you may have a target audience. So let's say, if your target audience is, let's say, if you're into the B2B business, and let's say your target audiences is basically, the government organizations, for example, then you know very clearly that there are 192 or 190 odd nations around the world, and that's the maximum that you can reach out to. Or maybe if you think that it is, the government-owned institutions who are into certain into certain space, so you can look at that. So effectively, you can actually, and this becomes true specifically for products which are new, because you don't have any alternative, so there is no set example or a reference point. So bottom line, just to conclude, so I would suggest that you look at surrogates, or you look at your target audience or target market, and then make a rough estimation of what it is looking at, and this is basically to give an idea and an estimate that are you talking of, 100 customers, 100,000 customers, or maybe, 1 million or 1 billion customers. So people are looking at, order of magnitude rather than an accurate number. I hope
Yes,
it
thank you,
really
sir.
addresses the
Yes,
question.
it does. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so moving on. So as I mentioned, so let's start with the end game. What is it that we are trying to do? We want to propose an investment amount at a certain valuation, and we are saying that we want to dilute to a certain extent, which basically means that we are saying that, let's say I say that my value of the company is $1 million, because of XYZ reasons, I want to raise $100,000, and therefore I want to dilute to an extent of 10%. So what investors would like to see, that your estimation of the requirement or a need has been made, holistically, it is complete, and it takes care of certain milestones, and it reaches a certain period. So typically, in my experience, last 1.5 years in the startup world, so typically people would look at, raising money for about 1 to 1.5 years. Typically, that's what people would do, because you want to reach a certain milestone. Nobody is going to give you money today for your growth, 1.5 years down the line. And of course, the amount will then get iterated, basis, your discussions with the investor. Now, while, everybody talks about, there's a strong desire. Okay, I will not use the word greed, but there's a strong desire to maximize the valuation. But at the end of the day, you must realize that, when you do not have a revenue model which is certain, you don't have your costs which are certain, when you don't have a certainty of your market, you don't have certainty of your profitability, then it is a call that somebody is taking on you and the idea that you're proposing and your ability to execute the business. So therefore, while you may want to maximize valuation, but it is extremely important that, you get that investment and, make sure that you get started. I'm not saying that you throw away, you give a 20% stake for raising that $100,000 or a 30% stake. All I'm trying to tell you is there's a practical call that you need to take, so that make sure that you get going and you are in business. Now, so how do you do that? So typically, and this is something that, making a financial plan, as a finance guy, I have done it for my living for, almost 30 years, but there is no rocket science in this. You have to simply make, an Excel sheet, where you have maybe 24 or 36 columns, where you build a monthly estimate of how much, customers you're going to acquire, depending on the pricing that you have, how much is the revenue, and what are the different cost elements going to sort of, make that, deliver that product or a service, and therefore what will be the profit or loss. Once you make, a very simple Excel plan, okay, which every founder, I believe, every engineer can do it. It's a very, very simple thing to do. Then automatically you will get to know how much is really the cash flow requirement. It is not that you need any finance brain or a chartered accountant or an MBA to do this. Anybody can do it with a plain and simple common sense. The key points to note is that when you make your product, so the unit economics and profitability has to be made very clear to the investor. At the end of the day, if you don't make money, okay, nobody's going to make an investment. And I'm talking of making money on paper right now. Reality is something different altogether. right? And of course, the path to profitability has to be seen, at the end of the day, for you, business as a whole. So any questions right now at this stage, specifically when we talk about funding, valuations, or, making a financial plan?
No, sir, I don't see any questions coming across.
Okay. So maybe, next few slides, I will just touch upon the different components of that investor pitch deck. The starting thing is the problem statement, right? I think this is really the 80-20 rule of your business. So if you're trying to solve for a real life problem, okay, which is affecting a lot of people, whether it is of different strata of society, I think and if you can, have an invention or an innovation, or maybe a different approach, which really causes that disruption. So for example, when, Flipkart entered, obviously they were inspired with Amazon in US. And when they started implementing, and started, making their marketplace and, delivering products to the customers at home. So there was one, innovation which they did, I'm sure many of you would have heard of it, was very simple. That was cash on delivery. Because, not everybody has credit cards or debit cards, or is financially savvy, or, tech savvy in that sense. Now that really killed it, because, a lot of people, and especially, who have cash and who want to actually pay in cash, they could actually use them and, buy their products, right? It could be as simple as that. Now, there are two ways to solve a problem. One is, you have a solution to a problem which you have seen. It could be cheaper, it could be faster, it could be greener, it could be more ethical, and so on and so forth, that you may have. Or, in your experience as a techie, in your experience as, a technocrat, you may stumble upon a certain solution, and then you may then try to find, the problems which can be addressed using these solutions. That is what we call, as finding the use cases, which typically happens in many of the tech cases and, B2B, because you start with a certain problem statement and you develop a product, and then you say that, well, actually, this is not it, but actually let me find more use cases, which happens by design or by default. And given this, then you start, have a product roadmap from a proof of concept to a prototype, to a minimum, viable product, and to a product market fit eventually. So all this would happen over a period of time, which could be 1 year or 2 years or whatever time it takes, right? So this is something that you do. And what you need to really write over a pitch deck is effectively what you are actually doing or what you have done. Okay. So you have to actually translate your real life story, your real life effort into slides and into, English or Hindi or whichever language that you use, right? The second part, having, identified the problem and the solution, is actually, will the customers use it? Now, this is something which is a very, very big issue. And, because, there is always that fear of the unknown. And assuming that you have something which is a high-tech product using AI, etc. I may be very cagey. I may be very, scared of using that product. I may be scared of my privacy and security, for example, right? So unless and until you talk to the customers, you engage with customers, and you make customers use your product, and you understand customer behavior and apprehensions. And eventually, when customers start using it, which was your 80-20 rule, then the next challenge is he ready to pay? Because if a customer is not ready to pay, then anyway, it's not really a product market fit. And then you have to go back on the drawing board, because anyway, you can't make money, right? So, positioning your product versus the existing solutions, newer solutions, competitor products is something that you have to get. And there is a huge science behind, the customer behavior, buying behavior, the value proposition, positioning, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is something which is a science in itself, right? Now, as far as the use cases are concerned, you want to, see whether, there is a market potential and can you really access the market? I mean, you may actually build, a great product and let's say, I mean, it is to, it is for the government, for example, which is in the defense and so on and so forth. Now, the market access is very, very difficult. I mean, nobody can just go about, selling defense products to the government, for example, right? So the next step is obviously, assessing the market size, which we talked about through the question, which I had, and we have already talked about it. So the moats are important, right? I mean, there could be innovation, there could be something, where you can get, recurring benefit or advantage. There could be some lock-in which you could result. For example, I mean, if it is a cloud service, for example, and if I have migrated all my data to a certain cloud, now going back to, churning out and going back from Amazon to Microsoft to Google, I mean, it's a huge, huge deterrent. Okay. So it's not easy for me to sort of, switch customers, so easily. So that could be a moat, for example. Long sales cycle, not everybody wants to really go through, long sales cycle, specifically when it comes to B2B products, right? Now, of course, the business, when we talk about, they could be B2B or B2C. I think we all are quite familiar with that. I think if, the way, investors look at, and it is also for your confidence booster as well, that if you can get 5 to 10 customers who use your product, and who can give you feedback, to basically, move your product from an MVP to eventually a product which actually will achieve a product market fit, that can really crack the problem for you in terms of acquiring customers. As far as B2C is concerned, I mean, this is something, I mean, this is far more, what should I say, involved. I mean, it may cost a lot of money because I mean, today the marketplace is, crowded, right? I mean, there are so many products and services. We have too less a time. Why should I use X product versus a Y product, right? So obviously, one needs to figure out the hacks, how do you acquire customers? I mean, if you can get a customer for free, I mean, that's a great, thing for you. And if there can be referrals, if your product can become viral, I think that's the greatest way that you can achieve your, acquiring customers. So LTV, and which is the lifetime value, and customer acquisition cost, I mean, these are terms which are used effectively as to determine as to how much you will earn from a customer throughout its life. I mean, which could be 6 months, 1 year, or 5 years, right? How can you enhance the life of your customer on your platform, right? So cost of customer acquisition is something where everybody is very, very focused at. So typically people look at, 3 to 4 is a good number, if you ask me. I mean, as I understand, basis my interaction with a lot of people, but the bigger it is, the better it is, right? Last but not the least, we are all in the business of making money. While there is a purpose, without any doubt, because of which you are starting, your startup and your journey, and, you want to build it to scale, and you want to give return to your investors. So the question is, how does we make money? Now, there are different business models, I mean, for example, Flipkart, Amazon, these are marketplaces, So, I mean, for example, I mean, can you imagine that when, payment gateways, when they started, and I think BillDesk is one of those initial ones, which started like 15 years ago. I mean, they have, billions of transactions going through their portal. And of course, there are several of them now. I mean, they get maybe 1 paisa or maybe even less for every transaction that they do. So which is a transactional sort of a thing. And now, because of their acceptance, now it becomes a great business model. Book My Show, Redbus. I mean, when Redbus started, I remember 14, 15 years ago, I mean, it was almost impossible, right? Because here you are trying to, get the customers as well as you're going to tie up. I mean, it's like a marketplace eventually, right? Because you have two-sided problem. You have to get, the tour operators or the bus owners as well as the customers. The same thing goes with Book My Show. But these guys have made an incredible, impact in terms of making a business model out of it, right? And Book My Show, we happily pay 40 or 50 rupees for booking every ticket, and which was earlier, free, because, it's the convenience which it offers, So effectively, how do you make money is extremely important. And it's not that you need to make money from day one, as long as you have a visibility or a path or a milestone by when you will make money. I think that's great. Lastly, I will touch upon a topic which is pricing, which is, so there are three terms, which are typically used, cost, price, and value, right? So cost is effectively what you spend to deliver that product to the customer. So that's really the cost. And value is what a customer derives out of it. Now, for example, I want to have, the kebabs from Lucknow, and Zomato has started this. I don't remember what they call it, but effectively now one option is I go to Lucknow, by train or by, flight or whatever, spend X thousand rupees, go and have the kebabs and come, right? That is one way of doing it. The second is I can use Zomato, maybe pay 500 rupees as charges for them to deliver at my home, right? Within a matter of, let's say, 6 hours. Now, if that be the case, I don't mind paying that 500 rupees because it is still much cheaper for me. Or even if it was 1,000 rupees, I would still pay that because I want to treat those kebabs, at home to my guests who are traveling from US, for example, So the value is immense, and the price that you charge is something that you really charge to the customer. So always, remember that, the value that your customer should derive, it should be much more than the price that you offer. And that's when the customer doesn't mind paying that price, number one. And number two, you can actually start charging more as you go along, So it should never be a cost plus model, because then that will not lead you anywhere, both in terms of running your business and as well as attracting customers. So this is it from my side so far. I think I have taken probably 10 minutes more than what I thought it should be. But now I would like to, leave all of you with a food for thought, as well as, questions that you may have, various topics. Thank you so much for your time and patience.
Thank you for your great presentation, sir. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Yeah, Charles, please go ahead. Yes, Charles, please ask your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. Actually, in our incubator, there we get sometimes the aspirational entrepreneurs who just have an idea, but they have not yet actually went through the POC and that the process. So the people like that, when we're guiding them, so when we are telling about the process of the about the entrepreneurship, so about regarding investors and getting the funding and etc. these things. So in what way should we convey to them that, because from the beginning, if they keep in mind that ultimately we should go to investor, we should get funding. So what kind of advice or what kind of directions we should be giving to them so that it will benefit the aspirational entrepreneurs. So if you can give us some direction, it will be helpful. Thank you.
Charles, I think let me start with the softer aspects, because I think that is more important. So, see, I think if if you have a belief or a conviction in your ability to translate, to convert that idea, into a reality, okay, your conviction will get you the first funding. Okay, so it's about your thought it's about your commitment that you are not going to, you're going to, throw in the towel, midway. Because, it's a journey which is a difficult journey, right? That is my point number one. Point number two, now, everybody looks at, when somebody is putting in money, they use a word that, do you have skin in the game? I mean, what is in for you? So, the founder can say that, well, I mean, I was earning, let's say 30 or 40 lakh rupees per annum salary. Now I have left that and I'm, joining this business and I'm pursuing this path. I'm not going to earn any money for the next 2 to 3 years. So that itself is my business. That itself is my commitment. But sometimes, that is not enough, because people want to see that, some money is invested, where some work is done, it goes beyond the commitment, it goes beyond the conviction of the founder and the English that he uses in convincing people about, delivering the product eventually, right? So if you have gone down that path for some time, where you raise money through your friends, family, and so on and so forth. And, and sometimes, incubators like, SIIC at IIT Kanpur are incredible, because you provide that platform for people, you give that ecosystem, you give that space, you give that material, which is available, which somebody can avail to actually develop that product and pursue that dream. So the second is that, so first is the conviction. Second is that you walk down that path for 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months by spending some money, and, convincing somebody to give you that money, which your near and dear ones would typically do. So that's the second stage. And then when you go to the investor, so then they say, well, I mean, it is not that he was toying because he didn't have a job or he resigned and therefore he's toying with that idea, but he actually meant it. He walked down that path for 9 months. He has spent his, he has toiled. The third thing is, getting some idea, okay? Through, mentorship or through experts around you to effectively, get some knowledge. And of course, everything is available on the net. You can do your own research, right? But get some idea where you can talk a little bit more about the market, about the customers, and about what you can do, what's the kind of business that you can build, which can then give some ideas to the investors and build more confidence. So I would say these are the 3 stages which you can probably do.
Yes, sir. So it is about our conviction, then whether we are having our skin in the game,
Yes.
and what kind of money we have put in, and also getting to know about the market. So yes, so
not just money, is time that you have put
yes.
your 1 year of your very important years of your life and career you have dedicated to this cause. That is a reflection. It's a proof of your commitment, actually.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
I can see there is one question. It said, if I can read out, our company works in agri domain and is founded by 2 founders and investors. Or anyone who can give us some order asks, what's the plan if something unexpected happens? How one should reply to them who's working in agri sector? So I think it's a good question, because it's about the risk, right? So see, now the business, so there are the risks you can classify into 2 buckets, There are certain things which you can't do anything about it. The weather, the rains, you can't do anything about it. There are, farmers who spend their, 3 to 6 months in, for their crop, reaching to a stage where it reaches a stage of harvest, and then you have hailstorm and the whole crop is destroyed, right? So I think first thing I would say that if there is something that is not in your control and which is related to, a factor outside your control and which is related to weather and so on and so forth, so there is nothing that you can do. What you can do, and assuming that there is a cyclicity, of the product that you're looking at for the agriculture use. So, you can't do in this cycle, then you will go to the next cycle. So what you need is, can you sustain yourself emotionally and financially until you get to the next cycle, assuming, it is once a year kind of a thing or once in 6 months, right? So your tenacity to be able to sustain and the money to be able to run, whatever rent that you're paying or people have you hired and so on and so forth. So if you have that, and how you're going to utilize that time to maybe perhaps better improve that product, okay? Or maybe, you can look at some other use cases so that you can mitigate the risk of, let's say a crop, season getting washed away, because that's your learning, so that, if something were to happen, at least you have an alternative use case where you can actually earn some revenue and income, and therefore, you can sustain yourself. So this is something which comes to my mind.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions? Along with us today, we have the ED of BNI Kanpur, Mr. Vikas Goenka. Sir, I saw your hand was raised. Thank you so much for coming and joining this session. Tarun sir, Vikas sir has been a constant support to the incubator since a very long time.
Thank you, Vatsal, for giving me this opportunity. It's a wonderful presentation, Mr. Tarun Bhargav. It is really useful for all of us. I have some observation I want to share and want to get your views on that. That marketing strategy, normally I see most of the startups, they never talk about it in their in their pitch. And most of the investors, as I belong to industrial community, they look for the marketing strategy also. So do you think that should be included in the investor pitch?
Sir, absolutely. I mean, it has to be an integral part of an investor pitch. There is no doubt about it. Okay. I mean, I'm just, because, people would want to know that while you have built a great product, how you're going to communicate to your target audience, how you're going to reach out to your target audience, because that's really the key. In my house, I may be a great guy, but if nobody knows me outside the world, my knowledge is, virtually, confined to the four walls of the house. So that marketing strategy is absolutely an integral part in my view. Now we may say that, especially the startups who are early, now they may not be great marketing experts, right? So they may not know what are the 10 things which can be done. So to the best that you can, with the help of people around you, okay, and to the best that you can research, and some of these things are common sense, so effectively you put whatever best that you can, and and then hopefully and once the investor really comes on board, I mean, they're going to work together with you and help you develop a marketing strategy as well, because finally in your success lies their success. So I mean, does it really answer your question? I mean,
thank you so much for your views. And nowadays, all these startups are looking for investors, those who can be there as a strategy maker on their board. They're not only looking for money, but the strategy people who can help them in building their business also. So
absolutely.
Do you think that metrics need to be presented during investor pitch?
I mean, I'm sorry, you're referring to, I mean, the fact that you are seeking investor as a strategic help besides, providing money?
Yeah.
No, I think it goes without saying. While you can certainly put it across that we are, seeking help in terms of, building the business. Okay. I mean, there is absolutely no harm in putting it very, very transparently. But I think that goes without saying. Anybody, especially the institutional investors, some VCs, for example, and even I would say individuals, I mean, who have put in, let's say, significant amount of money, would definitely want to have a say in the strategy. And when you actually sign a shareholder agreement, when you they sign actually a share purchase agreement. So you can expect them to actually list some of their clauses there. So they will say that, I mean, any business strategy or a marketing strategy will require our approval. So in fact, not only, it's your desire as a founder, but also it could be your compulsion or an obligation to actually discuss with them.
It is a compulsion, I know, but if they can add on their investor pitch their desire also, it will give them more points, I believe.
No, absolutely. I also believe so. That
Yeah.
also shows that you are open to learning. You are looking at, the spirit of partnership.
Yes.
You are looking at leveraging. The only thing one has to be careful that, you are not looking at trying to outsource this,
Yes.
that you are trying to pass the buck. You still have the ownership, you will do it, but you are looking at guidance and support and so on and so forth.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tarun Bhargav, for wonderful presentation and answering all the questions which may be not relevant now. Thank you, Vatsala.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, Pranav, I was waiting for your question. Please ask.
Hello, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. You mentioned about green bonds, and you actively work with some energy production company, electricity production, right, sir? So, in my background is also similar. We are working in waste to worth domain, basically waste to fuel, and then possibly waste to electricity. So sometimes we face the fact that however the valuable the product or the solution is, and however the societal the solution can be, there can be viability gaps, and for that the funding is required, and that funding is not essentially going to give very high returns like in some products or from those from some IT companies. So in that case, are there any, like from your experience, any teams of investors or organizations, except government, who are willing to put funding in such scenario where the viability gap is there? Yeah.
So I think it's a very very valid question and very pertinent question, I would say. So typically, as you rightly said, Pranav, that viability gap typically will be done by the government. And why government would do it? Because eventually the product or whatever that you're doing, it is for a greater good, not only for the end users, but it is for the greater good for the country or for the mankind, right? Eventually, and therefore somebody would do it. So, so typically I would assume, okay, and it is safe to assume that a viability gap funding would give either no returns or it would give return in a situation where your business, you are doing better than your base case. So because you'll have a certain base case, right? You'll say that I will, achieve X production, Y sales, and Z income, eventually, right? With this sort of an investment. So only when you do more than Z, income is when, that extra, which is achieved as a revenue and a profit, is going to go towards the viability gap funding. To the person who has, provided that. So in my view, frankly speaking, I have not really interacted with bodies who actually would give this viability gap funding other than the government. But my guess would be that, there are institutions, so there are foundations, okay? There are either, of, industrialists. For example, like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? For example. So who are typically working for a cause, whether it is education, whether it is women, whether it is climate, and so on and so forth. Okay. There could be charities or foundations who would then, if they are very, very passionate about the cause that you are looking at, may actually consider a viability gap funding. So I think that's what we'll have to search for. Because eventually he's not really expecting anything in return. At best, his principal capital or maybe something else in return, but that also the probability is very, very low. He's not in the big business of making profits.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But we can surely, talk offline. Maybe I can, talk to more people around it, and I can come back to you.
Sure, I would like to do that. Thank you, sir.
Certainly. Thanks, Pranav. So Yeah, I think we're towards the end of the session, and thank you so much, Tarun sir, on behalf of all of us attending this session and the incubator. We will come back to you with different set of questions and planning for the series under this topic.
Thank you so much, Vatsala, and the entire team for giving me this opportunity. So since I would just like to end by saying, since I have had experience as a finance person, right, as a CFO for many years, so I have a bit of a finance bias. So when I look at businesses, I look with a finance lens. So the different aspects of preparing a startup and making an investor pitch, which has a broader business connotation and wherein a finance lens is required, is something that I'll be more than happy to interact, right? While basis my business experience, I can always talk about different subjects, including a go-to-market strategy. But things like when it comes to valuation, when it comes to funding, when it comes to making plans, when you are looking at in terms of the nature of investors and so on and so forth, assessing the risks. So that's something which comes pretty much naturally to me, and I would be more than happy to talk about in the subsequent sessions. Yeah. So thank you
Certainly.
once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. And please, you may send your further requests for sessions to me directly. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.